Today we're going to look at 4 different areas where lighting can be upgraded in apartment blocks. We're going to look at the car park, the foyers, garbage rooms and garbage chutes, and fire stairs. Now these are not the only places that you have lighting in an apartment block. You'll also find it in plant rooms, pool, gym, leisure areas, and external garden locations as well. But let's jump in and start with the car park area. So many of our car parks are 1 or 2 levels. If we think about the lighting that you've got throughout these areas, you've got lighting on entry and exit ramps, you've got lighting behind car parking spaces, you've got green running man exit lights near the fire stairwells, which allow you to maybe exit up to street level in an emergency. You may have a loading bay, car wash bay, and sometimes the lifts from the building enter into the car park area, and you might have a different style of lighting right outside that lift entry. So what people started doing over the last 5 years, people have been doing LED lighting upgrades in car park areas. If your building's already done, was an early adopter 5 years ago and did LED retrofit tubes, you can still save another 15% on electricity by now doing a motion censored LED lighting retrofit and actually getting rid of the old fittings entirely. So there was a cheap LED retrofit tubes that look like fluorescent tubes that could be slotted into existing fluorescent fittings. That was done over the last 5 years, and even buildings that did that, it's possible to save a lot more money by now entirely pulling down those fittings and putting in the most recent LED lighting. So what we've seen is in each consecutive year, the power consumption of the lights has gone down. Now, one of the things we noticed in car park areas was to really save energy, people were putting 4-foot or 1200 millimeter battens down the thoroughfares where the cars drive. And then they started putting 2-foot or 600 millimeter battens over the car spaces where people actually park. Now, let's just think through the use case of coming home from Coles, Woolworths or Aldi and reversing into your car parking spot, opening the boot and getting your shopping out. So this is an area where you do want the light to be able to see the items in the back of the car. Now, when people were trying to save energy by using 2-foot lights over the car spaces, the light wasn't spreading as far to the back. And a recent innovation that's just come out in this last year is a 4-foot or 1200 millimeter batten light that actually has a half power mode. And by that, I mean, only every second LED dot can be illuminated with a little dip switch setting on that light. And the benefit of a 4-foot or 1200 millimeter motion censored LED batten light is it spreads the light further while only consuming the same amount of power as the equivalent 2-foot light. And the benefit of this is it gets that light further to the back or where you might be getting the shopping out of the car. Now we measure the intensity of the light in what's called Lux. And in a car park area, you need about 40 Lux as a background level uniformly throughout the car parking area. That's when motion censored lights are brought up to their full strength. When no one's around, you can have the motion censored lights drop down to 10 or 20% power. But when people are present, you need that uniform 40 Lux. And we'll talk a little bit more around Lux later on, but there are a couple of things that you can do here. There are free apps which you can download onto your mobile phone. A couple of examples of them are Lux Camera, Galactica, and Lux Light Meter Pro. And these are free apps. You can walk through the car park area and it'll tell you whether the lighting is sufficient, it's meeting that, that standard in your car park area. Some people think about the lift entrances into the car parking area, and they might say, well, we don't want a motion censored light next to the lift entry, but the sensitivity of the motion sensors has also improved in the last few years, and we're now with microwave sensors which might detect people up to 8 meters away, and they also come on a little bit more smoothly than, say, the infrared sensors that we knew from 30 years ago. So, you know, even a light that's directly outside a lift at an entry point into the car park can still be a motion censored light, and people will usually adapt to that. Another thing is people ask about safety in the car park area, and motion censored lighting in the car park is actually safer than lights that are on all the time, because if anyone moves, they can't fool the motion sensor. That light will come on, and so you'll know if someone's moving close to you or in a nearby part of the car park. So, you know, the other thing to think about is you need a mix of emergency battery backed up lights in a car park area that would meet your 90-minute test if power was dropped to the building. That has to be tested once a year during your annual fire compliance inspection. So you get your fire compliance certificate. And so typically when you're doing the thoroughfares through the car parking space, every second light or maybe every third light will have that emergency battery in it. It's better to have a lithium-ion battery rather than a NiCad battery. It's better for the environment, and also the warranty is longer. You'll get a 2-year warranty on lithium-ion batteries. Another thing to keep in mind is if fire compliance people come through, do the testing, and one of your lights fails, you don't need to necessarily replace the whole light. They might quote you on doing that. It's quite often you can buy a battery for a lithium-ion battery for $40. Electrician just installs it into that emergency battery backed up light, and you can save a lot on your fire compliance tests. Here's an example of a Lux Meter that you can buy from your local electronics store. It's a little bit more accurate than the smartphone apps that I mentioned earlier on. Okay, so let's move into the foyer areas. Now, in terms of the order that you would do LED or motion censored LED lighting upgrades in an apartment building, I'd usually recommend leaving the foyers till the end. Out of the 4 sections that we're looking at today in the building, foyers are the areas that have the most amenity considerations that have to go into the lighting. And there's a design aspect to it as well. But a couple of things, we'll just talk through what you might have in the foyers of your apartment buildings. So quite often people will still have fittings in the roof that have the CFLs. They're the twirly compact fluorescent lights that you used to buy from the supermarket. And sometimes you'll have a fitting which has 2 of those in the foyer areas. Now they're hideously inefficient. They can be replaced with say a 6.5-inch cutout LED light. Typically people aren't doing motion censored LED downlights, but the thing to look for with LED downlights, which you might install into foyers, is you can now get tricolor downlights, and that's gives you the ability to switch it from, say, a warm sunshine-like color through to the cooler lighting style. So that's measured in Kelvin. 3000 Kelvin is your warmer lighting, and 6000 is your cool, clinical, hospital grade style lighting. So sometimes for the foyer areas, you want the warmer lighting. You still need your emergency battery backed up lights in these areas. You also will have your green running man exit lights in the foyers. As you move through the different lift lobbies going through the building, some older buildings used to have Spitfire, a little red dot style light that would only come on in the event of an emergency. Some even older buildings have what were called emergency non-maintained lights, a square box that just sat there all the time waiting for power to drop before it would come on. With the move to motion censored LED lighting, those older blocks are mainly getting rid of those emergency non-maintained lights now. So there are some of the considerations to think about when upgrading the foyers. Also, you can see some lifts here. We were just speaking to an apartment building that actually had a former CEO of a lift company, and he was saying the new lifts actually dim down the lights inside the lift when no one's inside the lift, and that's a lot of the time the lights are running in the lifts 24 hours a day. So it's difficult though to coordinate upgrading of lighting in the lift, because that usually comes under your lift maintenance contract and you actually have to ask the lifties to do that lighting upgrade. Okay, we're going to move on to garbage chute and garbage room lighting, and this is the dirtiest that this presentation will get. Now, the use case that we'll talk about here, our strata buildings have plenty of waste areas that look just like this one. I'm sure that you've seen signs in this area that say, please turn off the light when you move away from the garbage area, but invariably people ignore the signs and these lights get left on all the time. So this is a great area to use motion censored LED lighting. If you think about it, people are coming, garbage in one hand, they're going to use the other hand to lift the lid of the bin. So you actually, and particularly with coronavirus, people are more sensitive about turning light switches. Now's a great time to decommission that light switch and move to a motion censored LED light in this area. One of the things that you can do is dim these lights down to nothing when no one's around, because you don't have to meet safe movement in this area the same way you would have to in, say, a fire escape. So also, if you're in a multi-level apartment block and you've got garbage chutes and you've got little doors that go to the hatches on each level, think about the lighting that you've got in there. Sometimes that's running 24 hours a day. It may not, we have noticed sometimes that if you've got an extraction fan in that small enclosed space, it can create a disturbance that is picked up by the motion sensor of a motion censored light. So maybe, you know, just be cognizant that the motion sensor might get triggered by an extraction fan in that garbage chute room, and you might not get as many savings, but still a great area to be upgraded because the lighting is usually running all the time. Okay, the fire stairs. In apartment buildings where these are not trafficked frequently, this represents the lowest hanging fruit. It's the section where you should immediately do your motion censored LED lighting upgrade first before any other area of the building. And the reason for that is that when you've got a fire stairs that's low trafficked, and for example, you move from twin fluorescent lights, which are on 24 hours a day, to motion censored LED lighting, maybe just 2-foot lights in the fire escape. And keep in mind, you only need a battery backed up light at the landings. So on the split levels, you can get away with a motion censored LED light that doesn't have the battery pack. For that fire escape as a project on its own, you can get up to 90% savings on energy, and you can get a payback in under 1 year.